Hold on.
Okay.
Yep, you're live now.
Great, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good afternoon, everyone. And welcome to the Committee of the Whole of the City of Youngstown City Council. Today's date is Tuesday, March the 23rd, 2020. The time is 4:00 p.m. Today, I'll be chairing this meeting. My name is Anita Davis. I'm 6th Ward City Council and a member of the Finance Committee. Also present today with us is Councilwoman Basha Adamczak, 7th Ward, Councilwoman Samantha Turner, 1st Ward, 3rd Ward,
Wait a minute.
4th Ward City Council, Mike Ray, 5th Ward City Council, Lauren McNally, 2nd Ward City Council, Jimmy Hughes, and 1st Ward City Council, Julius Oliver. Okay, also present are Chief Carl Davis, Finance Director Carl Misek, our IT guru, Rick Deeks, our clerks, Jennifer Ossider, and our city clerk, Valencia Morrow. Did I miss anyone? Okay. Oh, uh-oh. And I'm going, can anybody hear me? Hello? Mike, can you hear me?
You're a little choppy. I don't know if
Okay.
you're still having problems.
Okay, I'm not, okay, Mike, could you, okay, I got rid of, if you can hear me, I did the chairperson's roll call. Could you, as pro tem, take over the meeting for me?
Yeah, maybe you should restart or something. See if you
Yeah,
can get your
I'll
internet
be,
hooked up.
I'll be back, yeah.
All right.
Our President Pro Tem, if you can hear me, Mike Ray will take over. Thank you, Mike. I'll be back.
All right, I will assume the role of chair while Anita's solving her internet problems. She did the roll call, so that would bring us to item number 2, 2021 municipal budget overview. Where's Kyle at? Let me find him on here. Oh, there you are. Kyle, are you ready to kick that off? Is that what we would?
Yeah, that makes sense.
Is that the one? Is that this sheet here?
Yes, we're gonna start with that. Correct.
I don't know. I like to share my screen. I have it up. Do I have screen sharing abilities? I don't know if that's helpful.
Mike, I will make you co-host, so you should be
It
able
looks
to.
like I can. Does anyone, do you guys, what's the preference of the body? Do you want me to share it? Do you guys want to see it on the screen or? Okay, I'm seeing head nods. Okay, well, now let me see if I can share that.
That paper we just had.
We good to go with that, Kyle?
Yes, that makes sense. That works for me.
Okay.
Can I begin to address the committee as a whole?
Yep, go ahead, Kyle.
Thank you. I appreciate that. So what I've shared with you is a document that you saw at the beginning of the budget process that originally outlined the general government funds, which is the upper half of the document. This document now has I've included the lower portion, which is showing you the enterprise funds, so that you can get a quick overview of what we've actually worked through in the presentation of the initial budget process that I put together for you based on our revenue forecast across those operating funds along with the enterprise funds. And I haven't changed any of those revenue forecasts at the moment. We had a meeting a week ago where I updated you on our income tax collections. And yes, that I have definitely raised the red flag that there is some concern, but at this moment, I'm going to stick with that income tax total, which then will allow us to keep the general fund revenue forecast as is, along with what we have in police and in fire. But I wanted to point out that the document that you have tonight, total budget, is detailed here in line items by total fund. So if you were to look at that document, you will see the revenue forecast for the general fund is the total at the bottom of the revenue page. If you look at the total appropriations for the general fund, it'll mirror up to what we have in that third column. And it will be that way across all those funds based on those revenue and appropriation totals. And then those deficits that are being created by the difference between the revenue forecast and the appropriations for those funds, those are the deficits that exist current year based on the budget that you have in front of you that shows where we are going to, in essence, meet everybody's operating needs, but we have scaled back all of capital needs except for areas where we have dedicated commitments where we have entered into lease payment agreements, as I discussed with the fire department, with the street department. But all the other departments outside of the enterprise funds have been scaled back or have nothing in them at the moment. So I just think that if there's an easy place to start conversation-wise, does anybody have any questions now that you see the whole budget picture where you're looking at your general government funds and then you're looking at your enterprise funds? Okay, given that there are no questions, I do want to point out that I have an asterisk in that summary page in the police fund. It's my understanding, and that's what I did update in the budget documents that I shared with you, that it was a request of council as a whole to reduce overtime in the police uniform division by $250,000. That is not updated on that summary page, but it is in the budget document detail that I shared with you by fund and by division. Is that something that council as a whole is going to want to make sure stays in the budget moving forward? Because tonight will be the last budget meeting we have. And the document that I shared with you, like I said, does reduce those appropriations.
So which document, Kyle, does show that reduction that was requested at the last meeting?
If this, what you're looking at right here that clerk of council shared with you is the summary, but at the same time, there was another document that is much larger. That is the correct right there. If you go to the last page, just scroll down to the bottom to the last page, you will see that the only change that was inserted is for $250,000. If you go back to police uniform, which is probably going to be page 13 or 14, keep going back, you're going to see where that reduction is in place. Keep going further back. One more. Right, actually go up one slide. There you are. Go up one more slide. There you can see that the overtime per your instructions, I reduced that in the uniform division. So I took their original total of $1,150,000 and lowered it to $900,000. So the document that we ultimately, if you give me the approval and give me those directions tonight, this is the document that will look like this, that you will pass for the 2021 budget if there are no changes after tonight's scheduled meeting.
Kyle,
Samantha, go ahead.
thank you. Where did you place that 250 back in the general fund, or I suggested that it go into the Parks Department?
Through the chair, I left that revenue in the police department because if those monies or any of those dollars do get expended, we would have to then, in essence, funnel funds there to make up that shortfall. So right now, the revenue is still being diverted to that fund. The appropriations have been reduced. So the question is, if we were to move the revenue and put it someplace else, and we end up, again, not generating any additional income, we would have to rely on the surplus at the end of the calendar year to be diverted if everything stayed as is and we expended $250,000. So at the moment, it is, getting back to Councilman Turner's question, the revenue side of those funds are still in the police fund.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I have a follow-up.
Go ahead, Councilman Turner.
Thank you. So in the event that they exceeded their overtime budget, they would need to come to council to increase their appropriation. Is that correct?
Through the chair, once they exceed it, there's a timing. They can come to you and actually ask, or they can inform you through the administration. We would notify you that we have exceeded that. When it comes to overtime, it's different than normal payroll, because normal payroll, we couldn't make changes without actually addressing that with you. If overtime goes over like it does like it has in the fire department, or it has in the wastewater treatment plant, it is my responsibility to notify you and to at least make you aware that if we don't have funds, we're going to have to, divert resources from other line items. But given that we have that surplus, I would notify you that as we have our quarterly meetings, that if we're getting close, that we potentially could be going over, and that we would be relying on those surplus monies to cover that shortfall, and whatever that shortfall would be at the end of the calendar year.
Okay, so if you do that, why couldn't we divert those funds to park for the mulch that's requested for our summer program, or for some upgrades in her lawnmowers and weed whackers? Why couldn't that go there? If we may have to use a surplus for that, why couldn't we use it? I'm not understanding why it can't go to the parks now and come out of the police fund, period.
Through the chair, that decision is your decision. I follow what you instruct me to do. Right now, I reduced the appropriations in the police department overtime. If council wants to do it through the budget process, we can make those changes. Or if council would like the administration to bring those changes to you as separate ordinances, we can do it in that manner. That's why we're having this meeting, so that you can give me the direction that you want me to, move in.
Okay. It looks like, Samantha, did that answer your question sufficiently? Because Anita has her hand up.
Yes, that answers my question.
Okay. Anita, go ahead.
Thank you to the chair. And I do apologize if I end up freezing, but my computer is having problems. So Cal, you've left it there, but it's not moved to there. But it could be $250,000 could be returned to the general fund, correct?
The chair, yes, we could right now, if you went back to that first page and you went over to the far right, that what we show right now is a -98. It really should be a positive 152.
Which
So-
first page? The first one we were looking at, or the first?
Yes, yes, because I have, like I said, I did not adjust the revenue. So right now, where that asterisk is, if you were to come across, right now that appropriation forecast is $250,000 less. So it's no longer 17,569,000. It's now going to be 17,319,000. And so when you move over to the far right, the operating deficit will now show 152, and the year ending surplus will be, instead of 1 or 17, it's going to be 169,000. So yes, in essence, you could return those $250,000 back to the general fund, and the general fund deficit will decrease by 250, and the excess will be left in the general fund.
Okay, to the chair. As a follow-up, so if we leave it where you have it right now, even though it's not for overtime, we could not then move it if we wanted to. it would only be able to be used for that department.
Through the chair, no, you could put through an ordinance addressing that we reduce the revenue transfer to the police department by that 250. And by reducing it, it means it stays in the general fund. Because remember, we're subsidizing these funds, and the bulk of the subsidy is a transfer from the general fund. So you could put forth a legislation reducing that, and that would make sure that the money stayed in the general fund. But remember, this is just a piece of paper showing if everything that was in the budget was done and everything materialized, this is how it would end. But during the course of the year, council has the authority to change or to instruct me through legislation to move funds.
And through the chair as a follow-up, then rather than doing another piece of legislation to transfer it at a later date back to the general fund, why aren't we doing that right now? Reducing it right now through the budget here.
Go
and
ahead,
now.
Kyle.
Through the chair, if that's what you'd like to instruct me to do, I can do it. I just when we had the last meeting, you had said to reduce appropriation, so that's what I did. But yes, moving those funds back would then, like I said, those balance, that 17 ending balance would stay the same. It's just revenues would go down by 250 and appropriations would go down by 250 in police. But in the general fund, you would see the appropriations go down by 250 because the transfer would be smaller, and then the deficit would be less, and then you'd see an extra $250,000 back in the year-ending surplus.
Okay, thank you.
I see Bosch's hand up, but I also know that Councilwoman McNally Lauren had a question. I think it was before that. So I'm going to let Lauren go, and then I'll get to you, Basha. So go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks, Mike. Mine a little bit more for clarification. So I guess if we leave the $250,000 in the police department budget, then there's no point in reducing the overtime by $250,000. They still have the money. They still have the money in their department. So I'm not sure the goal, if the goal is to ask them to curb spending, then you should probably move it out during this budget period and put it back in the general fund. And then if it comes to a point, Kyle, like you're saying, where you're worried that they're actually going to need that money, and they are forced to come back to council asking for the money, but it's still sitting there, just not in their fund, and then council can watch it more closely. Because the way you described it, you're gonna, out of courteous, give us updates if they start to exceed their overtime, but nothing, we wouldn't necessarily be required to be notified if they start to go over, because they wouldn't need anything from us. But if you remove it from their budget completely, then they'd be required to come back. And if the goal of council is to kind of keep an eye on the overtime spending, then that might be the best way to handle this. But I'm not sure if I have a handle on what the goal is for the reduction. I know that we just.
Well, it sounds like so far from Samantha, Anita, and yourself, the goal was to reduce it by 250 and move it out of there, at least to the general fund, and reduce that budget. I'm gonna, Lauren, did you have anything else before I go on Basha?
Oh, no, I'm questioning like that.
Okay.
I'm questioning the people on council who made the suggestion to reduce it. If that's their goal, then, we need to make sure that we're hitting your goal.
I'm gonna hit Basha, and then I'll try to get through everybody. So go ahead, Basha.
Sorry, thank you. Through the chair, actually, Councilwoman McNally just stated what I was going to kind of question and ask. But I would like to, if we are going to try to reduce it by the 250,000, to remove it from their department and just, put it over to the general fund. So that's all. But other than that, Lauren already mentioned everything.
Okay. Anita, did you have a fault? Or go ahead, Anita, if you had another.
Through the chair, yeah, I just wanted to clarify that my position was that I wanted it removed totally, the 250,000, and placed back into the general fund.
Okay. Thank you. So right now, I just taken a quick note. Basha, Lauren, Anita, and Samantha all want it removed. Samantha did have the suggestion for it to go to the park, but it sounds like so far folks are agreeing that it should get out of there and go to the general fund. Councilman Oliver Julius, go ahead.
Thank you. So is anybody else okay with putting a portion of that into the Parks Department to take care of their mulch for this year?
Go ahead. I think Lauren was up first. Go ahead, Lauren.
Thanks. Yeah, my only concern with using any of the money for supplies or materials or equipment is that I know that's something that we talked about being a possibility to use some of the relief money for. And I'd rather spend that money on that stuff than our own money on that stuff, because it's not like we can spend our money and then reimburse ourselves from that relief money. So that, I mean, you know, that's, I guess that's my thought on it. I know that that particular item, the mulch, is probably a hurry and get it done kind of situation. So, you know, that poses a problem with perhaps using the relief money for something like that, but.
Okay. I think, I'm not sure if Anita, I see Jimmy's able to use his hand waving thing. So I'd like to recognize him for his use of technology. Thank you, Jimmy. And I will call on Jimmy. I don't know on this mode how to raise my hand. So go ahead, Councilman Hughes.
I think after this, my question would be to Kyle about this appropriation in, like, leaving it in the police department, and how do we know this? But I rather ask that question after we decide what you're going to do. But basically, I am all for the 250, which is what I mentioned during the last budget, removing it from the police department. And I see no reason, unless and Carol probably need to answer this, why it can't go into the park department. You know, because that's if he can explain why it can't, or if it's gonna disbalance because it's sitting where it's at. But in period, and my other question, and I wanted after we get through with this, is leaving money in the various different departments like he's doing with the police department. How do we do that? And how do we know which department has the surplus money just in there, just like that, you know? And what kind of system is that? That goes, and how often does that happen?
Kyle, would you like to respond to Councilman Hughes?
Yes, Jimmy, I'm sorry, Councilman Hughes, I apologize. The general fund makes a transfer to all of those general government funds because those general government funds don't have enough revenues to actually exceed the appropriation levels. That's what fund accounting, and that's how it works. So in essence, what I've said earlier, we have reduced the appropriations, but the general fund transfer to the police department, that's what I did not reduce. So when I reduce that, it's going to reduce expenditures in the general fund, but it's going to at the same time reduce the revenue in the police department fund. So when I reduce the revenue in the police department fund by reducing the transfer, it keeps more funding back in the general fund. So if it were to get to move to the park department, what happens is the general fund transfer to park needs to get bigger, and then the general fund transfer to the police department gets smaller by the corresponding amount. That is how we would move those resources. But then we would have to, at the same time, in the park department, increase the appropriation so that it could actually be expended. Because if we just move the revenue, it's just going to say that, okay, they have a surplus in revenue of that $250,000. So you'd have to identify which line items you'd like me to place that in the park so that they could then expend that $250,000. My only concern with doing that at the moment is we are still trying to verify how we're going to be able to use this $88 million that has been awarded to the city. I currently have some documentation And that documentation, based on what I'm reading, is going to very much limit how we are going to be able to use these resources. So there are ways that we can be creative, but I don't believe we're going to be able to be creative to the tune of how much we're going to get. So I think the concern that Councilman McNally had of not wanting to spend our money first in an area like this in the park department, unfortunately, I'm not sure if we're going to be able to funnel this money that's coming from the federal government into park. So we definitely, as Councilman Turner said, that if we're going to actually assist with some of these things that the park department is looking to expend or to acquire, we're probably going to have to use our surplus money, because at the moment, I'm kind of concerned that we're not going to be able to direct some of this money that we're going to get from the federal government directly to park to go ahead and potentially purchase mulch or some of the operating supplies that they're going to need. So that, I believe I answered your first question on the transfers. I think I explained how we would spend funds to acquire those things that the park may want. Your last question was, trying to get back to what it was. I'm trying to remember what you asked.
Through the chair, if I can sit.
Go ahead, Jimmy.
Thanks, Jimmy.
It's dealing with, I'll ask it this way. Are there any other funds in any other departments like this $250,000 that's not assigned to anything? You know, just like you did this, you know, and how often does this occur? And how did you identify it? How do we see this without having to wait for your call or something, you know?
Gotcha.
Go ahead, Kyle.
Through the chair. Jimmy, if you look at this first page that we're looking at right now, this is what money is left over. And that's why that asterisk is next to police. I haven't reduced it by 250. So right now, all of those operating funds, that far right-hand column, is if they were to expend what they have been given by council and the revenues materialize as I forecast in each of them. And remember, most of the revenues are a transfer. There's only two other places that there's real income, and that's in police and fire because of the income tax. So if I had updated that document, that extra 250 would be in the far right-hand column. Instead of there being 17,545 available, there would be 17,545 plus an additional 250. But I didn't update that. So what you're seeing on the far right, all of the excess is still in the general fund. That's why it has a balance of 4.6 million. The other funds have very minuscule balances because, again, when we budget fund accounting, we want to make sure the money is left in the general fund because you can move money from the general fund to these other funds. We cannot, in essence, after the budget gets passed, other than through an act of council by changing an ordinance, we won't be able to move money back unless you give me those instructions through legislation.
Okay. Thank you, Con. I think what you know, and I agree, Jimmy's question was, do we generally leave extra money and if we're not allocating it? And I think your answer is no, we do not. So I think the consensus, what I'm getting from my colleagues is put it back to the general fund or allocate it somewhere else. I will give my, Jimmy, was that okay? Would I just summarize?
Yeah, it's pretty much, he didn't really address how often it occurs. I get that. And you explained it as generally, I get that as well too. But yes, you can move on.
Kyle, that doesn't really happen, correct?
Through the chair, it's only going to happen if we had sizable revenue growth in the income tax, and then the police and fire, if the transfer, you know, was enough to meet its working needs, and then that revenue line in the general fund and police and fire, the overall income tax, if it was growing, then those line items would have more money at the end because there was growth in the income tax. When you think about all the other line items, like 911, it doesn't have any income or any revenue. It just has a transfer.
Okay.
The street department has, some, money that comes in from vehicles. Park department has some money that comes in from golf and from the parks, but there isn't any large revenue generator outside of the general fund and then income taxes.
Okay, thank you. Basha had her hand up, and then I'm not sure if where Julius was. I see Anita and I see Samantha, so go ahead, Basha.
Thank you through the chair. I guess just quick clarification. So from my understanding, say for example, because we know we do not want, the consensus seems to be we do not want to leave it in the police budget, but we can take it out, put it in the general fund, but we don't have to allocate it all today to the Parks Department. It can stay there, and then through ordinance, we can then allocate whatever, the 65,000 for the mulch as the year goes on, because perhaps we need to use the funding for something else. I mean, is that correct? Like, we do not have to allocate it today to parks, but we can do so in the future through ordinance, correct?
I believe, go ahead, Kyle.
Through the chair, yes, that is how council controls how money gets spent. Correct.
Okay, well, just for the record, then that is what I would like to see happen.
Okay. And I think that was kind of the consensus at the last meeting, if I recall, was there are lots of requests council still wants to entertain past the budget. The consensus was drop the 250,000 and then make those modifications through the committee process and through ordinance. I'm not sure if it was Anita or Julius.
Julius can go
Next.
first.
Go ahead, Councilman Oliver. Julius.
I gotta go because Anita probably say what I'm gonna say, and Basha already said what I was gonna say. So, so I'll ask my other question. And by the way, I'm okay with giving parks what they need to get started for the summer program now, or later, however it goes, however we decide to do it. I'm okay with doing it either way, as long as they get what they need for the summer programs. My second question would be, as it pertains to the 88 million, we're not gonna be able to reimburse the general fund with those funds. Those funds are gonna be allocated towards specific projects or specific things. I hope I'm asking the question right. So like when Lauren was talking about using that money for the Parks Department or whatever, and not using our money. So I'm guessing it's been done in other cities, those monies are going to be allocated towards certain things, but not specifically to reimburse the general fund.
Through the chair,
Go ahead, Kyle.
it's going to be a balance of a few different mechanisms. I do believe that there is going to be tools and opportunities to, in essence, use money that normally we would have spent that was out of our own coffer, and in essence, replace it with some, and I don't know if it's called CARES, that they American Recovery Funds they're that's how they're mentioning the description of these, that we will be able to substitute some of our expenditures by using those funds instead of our own, which will then free up our money to either be saved or to be spent someplace else. I just don't believe the bulk of what we're going to receive, that we're going to be able to use it in that manner. I think based on some of the things that I've been reading and some of the guidelines that are being handed down, which we are going to bring to you soon in detail, that we're going to have to be spending this money from a special fund and be identifying areas that meet or qualify and how we use that over the next 4 years. I'm hopeful that, as was with the CARES Act, that in time they will relinquish some of the stringent guidelines and allow us to do it or use it in ways that'll be more flexible. But I do have some plans that I'm going to share with you soon that I think are going to make you as a group very pleased that we can possibly use some of these funds immediately. And in that manner, using them instead of using our own funds, which will then mean that we can set aside some of our surplus and in essence, keep it there for next year. How we're going to go about that and doing that, we're working on putting that together. But answering your original question, this is going to be what we're going to try to do is, yes, earmark these funds to be used how they're right now being outlined. And if we can use these funds to substitute some of our own expenditures, we're going to work hard to figure that out.
Thank you. Quick follow-up.
Yeah, go ahead, Councilman Oliver.
Thank you, Kyle, for the explanation. do we know exactly how much the Parks Department needs to get started for the summer program? I mean, I don't know if they need the whole 250,000 for mulch, but if she did like 50,000 or whatever right now just to be prepared for the summer programs, is that something that we could do now and, you know, wait to do legislation later for whatever is needed, if there's something else needed?
Go ahead, Kyle.
Through the chair. Right now, remember, you have provided a budget to everybody for 12 months. So it's not like there's not funds already available to be spent. If the department heads are aware that you are going to assist them, it just means that they're going to spend some of that money sooner rather than later. It's not in any way going to hinder this process. It would potentially hinder it if it was something that needed to be expended in the first quarter of the year and the temporary budget did not provide enough appropriations. That would stop that process. But we're going to, in essence, next week, remove that temporary budget and put the full budget in place once council passes it. So you're going to see that the available appropriation dollars are going to swell compared to what they have currently. And if it's going to be addressed immediately in April, no, you're not in any way going to hinder the park department not being able to start and work on what they want to address immediately.
Thank you, Kyle.
Through the chair.
Was Anita next? I'm sorry. I think.
I have my hand. I don't know.
Okay.
Yes.
Go ahead, Anita. Yeah, I have you. I try to write it down, guys.
Okay, I think Kyle kind of answered my question because I was going to ask him what was the time frame to find out about that, the additional $88 million. And I was pretty sure that if we could find out in the next 2 weeks, 2 or 3 weeks, if there's going to be an increase on the cost of the mulch. And if there is, we could do the legislation immediately. We have a council meeting next week, and then 2 weeks after that, we can prepare the legislation and utilize part of this $250,000 for the mulch at that time period. I just don't want to see us using our monies right now if there's any possibility of using that $88 million to even pay for the mulch. I just don't want to see us using our money if we can wait a couple of weeks to find out.
Okay.
That's all.
Samantha?
Thank you. So to do mulch at 14 places, she gave us that figure, and that was $66,412.50 to get that order and to get it ordered and get it laid the top of spring. You know, that needs to happen. But I mean, if period. Then there are a couple other things that are on the list. The information that she had provided us and went through is for we have 3 very badly damaged tee boxes or greens at the golf course, and that's because we need a tee mower, that, and then a 0-turn mower, and that all would be $80,000 out of that $250,000, and that would be more of a let's get that going because the golf course will be opening next month and the parks are going to be opening as well, so that we are ahead of the game. But if my appetite is to move it. I understand that Cal, before when we talked about the police, he did suggest that we use the surplus dollars for some of the changes that the police department was suggesting. So, I mean, we made that suggestion, and the parks is just as important as any of our safety services. So I say that we pull that, and I stick with my same energy, pull that $250,000 down and put it into our parks department, or pull that, or just take $85,000 of it and put into parks and the rest into the general fund, and we can go from there. So it's not like it hasn't been suggested that we utilize those surplus dollars, because it has been throughout these budget talks. And these dollars aren't even the surplus dollars. These are dollars that are coming directly out of the police department and going into the parks department. So we're not touching those surplus dollars. Also, there's a lot that we can do with the CARES Act, again, I think I suggested this to you guys last week. If you don't have the 650-page bill, pull it down and read it. There is a lot that we will be able to do. It's much more flexible than the CARES Act. The American Rescue Plan has a lot of things that we can do for our community and for our city. So if you don't know, you will continue to ask somebody to tell you what you can do. So I suggest that we all take the time out to go over it and to have a robust conversation about what this looks like. But waiting and to find out what we can do and what we can't do will just put our department behind, and we're already behind because we didn't do much last year. So that is my suggestion, is that at minimum, we put 85,000 into the park so that they can get the mulch, get a zero turn mower and a T mower, and then we can move there from legislation.
Thank you, Councilwoman Turner, for your suggestion. I see Councilwoman McNally with her hand up. Lauren, go ahead.
Thanks. I think that the Parks Department does need, whether it's additional funding, whether it's reorganization, whether it's something. I know that what we did in the Parks Department last year didn't work, just from a basic maintenance standpoint. So it's great to talk about like brand new things and progress, but we couldn't even maintain our parks last year or the properties the parks owned. I need that to happen this year as a bare minimum thing. So I need the Parks Department to tell me what they need to just get back to basic maintenance for this year. And that's what I want to fund, whether it's summer help to cut grass, whether it is that zero turn lawnmower because they don't have one and that's why they didn't cut grass last year, whatever it is. I want just, you know, that's what I want to fund, because we need to just get our basic services back up and running this year, because they went down last year and we have not recovered from that in more than just one department. So happy to fund more in the Parks Department, but I need them to understand what I expect with that funding.
Thank you, Councilman McNally. Anita and Julius' hands are both up. Do we know who was first?
First ward, I was first.
Go ahead. The gentleman from the first ward can go ahead. The lady from the sixth ward will allow you.
Thank you. I just want to say I agree with Samantha and Lauren, and I think, you know, throwing that 85 in there now can help get those efforts going with that demand that Lauren was talking about to get that maintenance together. So I think the 85 will both help get our mulch program and everything going, as well as be able to free up some funds for those part-time workers. And we can always revisit it again down the line if there's additional funds needed.
Thank you, Julius. The lady from the South Side Sixth Ward, go ahead.
To the chair, as much as I love golf.
You do have a golf cart you drive around your neighborhood.
I have a golf cart and I love golf, but I think they're going to have to make, my opinion is that they make do with what they have for those tee boxes. If we buy a lawnmower, it's not to buy a lawnmower for the golf course. And I do say that with a tone to it. It's like, not when we have our neighborhoods and other things that aren't being cared for because they have a shortage of equipment. If we're going to buy equipment, we need to buy equipment that's not for recreational purposes. If that zero turn is going to be used in other places other than for a recreational purpose, that's fine. But buying a lawnmower, if they need mowers to cut our grass, take care of our neighborhoods, fine. To take care of the tee boxes at Stanball, a place where I probably used to spend 5 hours a day at least, okay? I just can't see doing it for the zero turns. And I would not be supportive of anything that's going to buy zero turns for sole use at the golf course.
That is not for the sole use of the golf course.
Hold on.
I don't interrupt. Okay. For sole use, you could correct me afterwards. But for sole use at the golf course, if it's not going to be utilized everywhere else, I cannot support that. And I understood about the mulch and everything else. I could, $35,000, $45,000. These always sound like such small numbers, but we fight, we argue over nickels and dimes. And I think the public to hear that how do I put this? I don't know what's more important. Recreational things for our kids are important, but I don't think anything's, if we can take from the safety forces and this, take from there and then say, we're gonna do things for recreation. There's nothing more important than our safety forces and their equipment. And I don't care who gets offended. I do not equate other things with our safety forces. Okay, there's nothing more important. No one will come here because of our golf courses, but they will come here if they know that our safety forces are properly maintained and we are maintaining them. But I just want to say, for the record, equating those two is something that I just find singularly offensive. Okay, and yes, by all means, if we're gonna buy mowers, buy them for the whole city and not for exclusive use at the golf course. Samantha, you're up, I know. You're just biting, go ahead. Bite.
Thank you, Councilwoman Davis. Will the lady from the north like to speak? Go ahead, Samantha.
Yes. So let me just
To that question.
yeah, to that question directly. Let me just add a point of clarity for as far as the mulch goes. At the meeting, Don gave us the report that we have not upgraded the mulch, and we've gotten that down from the state that we need to in order to continue to operate our summer programs. So that is why the mulch is important, because our food program is funded through the state, and we want to continue to have our summer programs for the children. Next, the mowers. The zero-turn mower is not just for the golf course, it's for the department overall, and the Parks Department does handle all of the parks properties, but there is a tee mower specifically for the tees. And if I had a golf outing at the golf course last year, and I played at the golf course numerous times, and if you saw the back tees, any golfer would say you guys are using it needs to be done properly. So I'm just saying those are some of the things that are higher up on the list, because the golf course does generate revenue and has generated more. It doesn't have to be to the tune of court size revenue, but it generates revenue and more because we do have alcohol sales there as well. So I do think that we do need to invest a small amount into that. And then when I say we are equating our safety forces to our parks, I'm gonna tell you why I believe our parks are important. One, because I am a mother of a small child and I use my parks constantly. And I have parks all around me. And when I go to my parks, I see a lot of people using our parks, and they are important to the quality of the neighborhood. They're important to the seniors of the neighborhood. They're important to the young people and the young families of the neighborhood. So it's why I'm such an advocate of us investing in our parks at a continuous pace and not hindering them. Now, as to last year, as we are behind and we're down, everybody tightened their belts, and we all saw suffering across a lot of departments. And I do think that we as a city cannot allow that to continue to happen. So with that said, I do think that I think the whole 250 should go to parks, but I understand that my colleagues don't have an appetite for that. So the 85 that I suggested, I think could go to give her a start. So that we can get the mulch, so that she can get an additional zero turn, she can get the T-mower, and what she needs to just begin to get further along, and we can begin to make her whole as we move through legislation and we get these additional funds from the federal government. So that is my answer to the lady from the South.
All right. Thank you, Samantha. I see Basha's digital hand up. And I see Lauren's, I think Bosch was up slightly before. In an interest of time, we do have more documents to go from. I think the consensus, if I'm following, is definitely 250,000 out of police, OT, and uniform. Some of it's the general fund. I don't know if we have enough folks in agreement to move some to parks or not, or if we're going to give the parks the same directive we gave all the other departments was we'll do this by ordinance by meeting, because there's a lot of debate on tee boxes and hot dog buns and golf course operation and everything else. So go ahead, Basha.
Thank you, through the chair. A couple comments. I first would like to clarify, I don't think it's an issue of us as a whole not wanting to supplement the Parks Department. I believe that we do, but I was under the impression that the consensus at the last meeting was that the majority of council wanted to go ahead and do everything through ordinance. I am a big supporter of the parks. I, in the 7th Ward, have the most parks in the city of Youngstown, and I absolutely want to make sure that they are maintained, but I feel that we keep going round and round on something that the majority and consensus of council already made last week. So I would like to just go ahead and move forward. And from my understanding, Kyle mentioned that they already have money for operating expenses. We can start there once we receive more clarification on how we can spend the money. We can continue forward at that time, but I feel right now we're rebuttaling, going back and forth on a consensus that was already made last week.
Thank you, the lady from the south of the Ward of Parks. Lauren, I believe, is raising her hand now, and then we'll try to come with a consensus so we can give Kyle direction to move on. Go ahead, Lauren.
Real fast, I agree with Basha. But just as I'm connecting the dots of conversations, I believe the water commissioner said he was gonna outsource his grass cutting this year. And so I assume they have lawnmowers that they no longer need, and perhaps Parks Department can purchase the water department's zero-turn lawnmowers. Conversation to have amongst administration though.
So in summary, the directive, thank you, Lauren, has been 250,000 out of uniform. We agree on that. Is there enough consensus, or do we want to stick to what was said last week and everyone come back with ordinance, or is there any feeling to fund a little bit of what the parks is asking for? Councilman Hughes, the gentleman from the far east.
Yes, and forgotten would be okay to add in there. I say take a vote, a raise of a hand or something, and we don't have to have back and forth discussion.
Right. So I guess I would just, poll everyone. Are we good on, I think everyone's in agreement on the 250 out of police overtime. Is that true? We're all in agreement? I see everyone's head shaking.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
There has been suggestions for various amounts to the park. I think at minimum, the mulch talked about being a necessity. I think, if that was hindering the park, or does anyone else have, that was Samantha's suggestion. Councilman Oliver seemed to agree on that.
Yeah, can I say something through the chair real quick?
Sure.
Even if, like Lauren suggested, parks needed to purchase surplus from the water department, it still would, require some additional funding. So like I said, I'm good either way. We can do it now or we can do it later. You know what I mean? If we do it now and it gives them a jump start to get what they need, great. If she can wait, you know what I mean? Great. Either way. You know what I'm saying? I'm just saying if we give her the 80 now, it may free up some additional funds for her to do other things like hire more part-time workers for maintenance and all that. So we just got to die with, without her being here to really save, she already gave it to us. But I think we can work this either way.
Okay. Any other suggestions? Either we're all in agreement on the 250, or who's in favor of partially funding any portion of the parks? I've got Samantha, Julius, and Jimmy are in favor of that. I would say then, do I count Lauren, Anita, and Basha? It not coming back with ordinance. Is that correct, Basha?
Yes.
That is correct.
You the tiebreaker, Mike.
I'm in agreement with coming back. The only olive branch, or the middle of the line, I guess, the deal would be the mulch, because that's safety related. And if we can come with a consensus to fund the mulch, I think that's a good middle of the road. And if everyone would agree on the amount. Samantha, what's the total for the mulch, if you could provide that?
$66,412.50.
Kyle, did you get that?
Through the chair, I will move $66,500.
Is everyone in agreement with that?
Yes.
Or we meet in the middle there? So we're taking 250,000 out of the uniform overtime into the general, and then we're taking the amount as indicated by Councilwoman Turner for the mulch. And those are the directives for this budget. Everything else we will revisit through committee and by ordinance to make any additional changes. Are there any other documents? We have general fund balance forecast on here. We have expense report, and we have revenue report. Do we need to review those documents in any detail, or is the summary page sufficient for everyone here?
I don't know what that all meant through the chair, but reference to the police department in that grant money for the cops, where's that at?
Through the
Go ahead,
chair,
Kyle.
that is not in the budget. That will be addressed by council's safety committee meeting that is going to take place this Thursday. I will explain to you the whole process of what this COP grant means, and if council as a group will revive that out of committee, we will then move forward at the next council meeting and address that. But that is going to be discussed this Thursday. Myself, Chief Davis, and the rest of the administration will be at your safety committee meeting to discuss that with you.
Correct.
Did that answer your question, Jimmy?
Yes, it does. Thank you, Cal. Thank you, Anita.
All right. Any other discussion on the expense budget report or the revenue budget report, which those will change slightly based on the consensus recommendations that we gave Kyle.
Through the chair, that is correct.
So I guess, Kyle, if you can just update those, if that would be the pleasure of the committee to see those in their final state. And our next step would be, if there's no further discussion, I see no hands raising digitally or visually or any facial expression indicating someone wants to talk or scream. Okay, laugh there. All right. I see Ginny's just eyebrows. He could raise them.
Really?
So, do we need to, as this body scheduled the special meeting, because we're going to need a special meeting right before the end of the year. Do we want to discuss that here, or it's not an agenda item? Is that we need to do this by the 31st? Last year, before shutdown, we did it at 9 a.m. on a Monday. That was kind of crazy. But does anyone have any suggestions on, or the clerk on availability to do this? Because that would be a one-item special meeting. We probably need to consult with the president of council too on availability for that. Go ahead, Valencia.
An email went out. It was decided that the special meeting will be Monday, the 29th. Everybody agreed to that, but we did not confirm a time. Initially, we said 4 o'clock, but we can confirm a time. And President of Council answered that email and said he's available that day also. So if we can confirm a time tonight, that would be good.
Is there consensus? I see Anita raising her hand. Is 4 good? Anita, go ahead.
To the chair, V, is the main available in the morning? I mean, I kind of like
he responded to the email and said he's available that day. I know he has death in the family this week, so this week wasn't good, but Monday the 29th. And then that also gave Kyle time we'll give him time to get it to his staff and make the edited changes and get it to the county. So Monday was the date that we talked about and emailed. So
if
I don't know.
we can stick with that. I apologize for not recalling that all.
fine.
Is that okay with you, Anita? The 4?
Through the chair,
Yes.
that's good for me.
Okay. Do we have a general wave of hand, shake of head, 4 p.m.? Do we have consensus 4 p.m. on Monday, the 29th is going to work, so the clerks could work to schedule that and Kyle could prepare for us?
Yes.
All right. Kyle, if you get those documents ahead of time, it looks like only a few minute changes. I don't know that we have anything that would conclude our agenda items here. If then I guess I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
Don't move.
All right, is there a second?
Second.
Second.
All right, Jimmy made the motion, need a second. We're all in agreement there. Thank you, everyone. Have a nice evening. Enjoy the sunshine.